There's a wonderful organization called Alcoholics Anonymous. They have little slogans that they post around their meeting halls. A lot of them are corny, but they're mostly effective. But one is extremely effective and very, very true. And that is, you don't get what you want. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you get.
Are you ready for that?
Oh, yes. What's the alternative? Not be ready? My name is Dick Perkins. I'm 85 years old and was bred in the mountains of southwestern Virginia and West Virginia.
Well, did you ever think that you'd come this far when you were young?
I had no idea. I just knew I wanted to get out of West Virginia. Pretty poor territory.
What was hard about that life?
Everything. Getting enough food. Getting to school. The winters were pretty bad. Sometimes we didn't have enough to keep warm, really.
How many children were there?
Just two of us. This was in 1930, right at the heart of the Depression. When I was growing up in the mountains of West Virginia, I was very, very lucky to have good teachers. And they took an interest in this coal miners' offspring and gave me books to read that weren't the school books, the textbooks. They encouraged me to participate in things like debate and public speaking and drama. So I was lucky in that people were there to lend a helping hand, to take an interest in. Every once in a while I sit down and make a list of the people that I don't want to forget thanking God for, that they happened to take an interest in my life because they made a difference, an incredible difference.
Do you think it's important to remember people?
Important, yes.
Will it be important to you that people remember you?
Well, I have no idea of knowing that. I somehow doubt it.
What's one of the most important turning points in your life?
Well, as it turns out, there were 5 of us who joined the Army together in 1948. We were 17 years old, several of us were, and you couldn't join on your own until you were 18. So there were 6 of us who actually wanted to join, and my mother agreed to sign for me to join the Army. We just had our 70th reunion. My best buddy, Jackie Weaver, his mother wouldn't sign for him to join the Army. So he went on to East Tennessee State College, and 2 years later he got drafted, got shot down in Korea, and was killed. So obviously joining the Army when I did and in the manner I did was the right thing for me and the most important thing for me. Otherwise I wouldn't be around to tell the story.
And what did you find in the Army that shaped your life?
Discipline.
Tell me about it.
Well, when you grow up in the mountains, discipline is not a buzzword. Although it's enforced, it's certainly not the kind of discipline that you get at Fort Jackson or Fort Benning. But learning to take orders and then learning to give orders is what the essence of discipline is. And that's what made the difference in my life, in my judgment.
What did you do there?
All sorts of things, but mainly I played football.
How did they recognize your skills in that area?
Well, when you enlist in the Army, you fill out about 100 pages of codified data on yourself. And one of the questions they ask is, what were your activities in college? And I put down football. I went out for the football team, but I didn't make the team because the guys were all 5 years older, and 3 years before they'd been jumping out of airplanes and killing Germans and Japanese, and they didn't have much time for a 16-year-old kid. But checking that little box caught the attention of somebody. So one day they pulled a truck up to the rifle range and said, "Perkins, hop in. You're trying out for the post football team." And so I joined the Army to see the world, and instead of seeing the world, I saw Columbia, South Carolina. I stayed there for the next 2 years.
But did you travel all over playing football?
Mm-hmm. All over the continental United States.
And what made you decide to leave the Army after 2 years?
I was bored.
What did you have in mind?
Just ready for the next sequence. Life moves fast when you're 17. You remember that?
So when you stepped out of your Army uniform, what did you step into?
Well, a friend of mine had got me a job as a radio announcer, and so I joined the staff of a little radio station in North Carolina and did that for a year or so. While the Korean War was going on, I didn't have to go back into the Army since I'd already been in the Army. I was the luckiest billy goat in America. So I had a chance to find out that I really should go back to college. And I was lucky enough to get a football scholarship at Davidson, and that accounted for the success that I've had, whatever, in the business world.
How so?
Once again, a different kind of discipline, mental discipline and scholastic discipline. But the being forced to study things that I had no idea in the world even existed, much less that I should know anything about them.
What did you find that you had an aptitude for?
Talking.
How did you apply that?
In the arts and the drama and one-act plays, speech contests, things of that nature.
But you didn't end up as an actor or pursuing a job in radio or television. Why not?
No, it was fascinating. In 1953, when the Korean War came to an end and I graduated from college, all the vets were coming back from Korea, and jobs were hard to get. But in the last of 1952, when I was a senior and interviewing, there wasn't anybody available to go to work except those who were 4F or veterans like me, and there were very few of us. So as a consequence, I had 23 job offers from things like accounting and bookkeeping and things of that nature, which I had absolutely no idea of. So as a consequence, I had 23 job offers and could go to have done anything I wanted to. And I would just flip a coin and take a job.
So what did you pursue at that point?
I went into the group insurance business because the resume said that you drive a nice car and have an expense account and call on company presidents. That sounded attractive as all get out.
Mm-hmm. And did it prove to be as attractive as you thought it would be?
Yes, it was very nice. except that they assigned me to the eastern North Carolina as my territory, and there's nothing in eastern North Carolina except the Lumbee Indians, and it's hard to sell a group insurance plan to a bunch of Indians.
So what did you do?
I went looking for greener pastures, and I found a company that wanted me to move to Atlanta and started in the grouping business. And so I came to Atlanta, which was a vibrant, magnetic, just a lively place to be in 1954.
How did you meet your wife?
I crashed a house party at Georgia Tech when I was at Fort Benning for summer camp. We crashed a fraternity house party and met her and another girl, and that was that.
But when did you get married?
In 53. In 1955, I came to Atlanta and joined the Junior Chamber of Commerce, which was a big-time business affiliation for a young man at that day and age. And they had a program running called Speak Up JC, a public speaking contest. You had to do a 10-minute original stand-up speech oratory. And as luck would have it, I won the thing, the national contest. And so I made a lot of speeches around the country and to national conventions and beauty contests and dog catcher shows and all sorts of things. And I got some attention that way.
So that was sort of a sideline for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you in the insurance business, were you more of a salesman or a leader of salesmen?
I'm a salesman, purely and simply, because I'm competitive. But the insurance business as a business is not a very fascinating industry. So a buddy of mine and I sat up late at night at company conventions and figured out ways we could change the insurance industry. So we invented self-insurance for large corporations. And in 1959, we left the insurance company and showed big companies like Southwire Company here in Atlanta and MARTA and Scripto, Atlanta Coca-Cola, people like that, how to self-insure their employee benefits. And we did the work for them on a fee basis and saved them incredible sums of money. The interesting part would come when the guy bought your story and he looked across the desk at you and said, "Now, Mr. Perkins, this is very fascinating. Who else is doing this?" And your answer had to be, "Well, you'll be the first." There was a moment of dead silence. But somebody had the gall to do it, and today more than 1/2 of all employees who are insured are covered by self-insured plans.
And are you known in the history books for this accomplishment?
I doubt it.
Really? Because it's huge.
Well, not really. Anybody could have done it. It's just a matter of somebody having the time and the opportunity to do it.
So did you and your friend create a company at that
A
point?
big company, yes. We had offices all across the country. And made a good living and created an industry. We actually created an industry, the self-insured, self-administered business started from that meeting.
So did you lead the industry?
Well, I was one of the leaders, yes.
And so you found a way to make the insurance business creative.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, which it hadn't been before.
Do you think fun is important in your life or even in work?
Oh, yes. can't imagine doing anything if it wasn't any fun.
What else that you've done is especially fun that you remember?
Well, the things that come to mind immediately are the things that I've had to give up because of advancing age. Flying, fishing, golf, things like that.
Why did you decide to learn how to fly?
Because I had clients all over the United States in little towns like Opp, Alabama, and Irwin, Tennessee, and I'd have to drive for 300 miles to see a client or catch a plane to Tri-Cities Airport and rent a car and get to them. So I said, well, there's an easier way to do it than this. And there was. So I bought a little airplane and told the guy he'd have to teach me how to fly it. Well, that wasn't anything. I bought my first car and told the guy he'd have to teach me how to drive it. We didn't have a car when I was growing up.
So you had no fear when that kind of thing came?
No.
And what made you decide to give up flying?
Just got old.
So when you've had to give up some of those things that were fun for you and really gave you a lot of pleasure, how did you feel about that?
Well, I have ambivalent feelings, depending on when I'm asked and who's doing the asking. But mainly I'm pissed off. In a universe as vast as the one that we're existing in, there must be more than one show going on. So my plan is to audition for a role in another play, and maybe I'll get to be a leading man instead of a heavy or a bad guy.
So you're fairly optimistic about what comes after this life?
No, I'm not optimistic, and I'm certainly not pessimistic.
Curious?
No, it's going to happen. No reason to be curious. That's about all I know about it.
But you've given it some thought.
Oh, yes, you have more hours in the day when you get to be an old man.
How about the legacy that you leave? Have you thought of your life as a legacy?
No, I've tried to do that because people encourage you to do it. And the only thing that I have any gift, any talent for whatsoever is words. I can write words and speak words, and people listen to them. I've made people laugh and cry with words. But no, I wouldn't say that the legacy has anything to do with that. I'll leave poems that I've written, but they're purely personal poems. They're between me and the person that I'm writing about or writing to.
Can you give me an example of a poem that means a lot to you?
Yes, one that I'm relatively proud of, and there are very few that I'm proud of. In 1994, 5 years after the fall of the Russian Empire, or the fall of the
Soviet Union.
The wall in Berlin. We went on a cruise. My wife and I went on a cruise to Russia and docked at St. Petersburg, the old Leningrad. And after sightseeing that day, we came back to the ship that night. Three or four soldiers let us on board the ship. They were drinking beer around the campfire. And my wife didn't feel good, so I went on up to the top of the ship where they have coffee and orange juice all night and looked out over the harbor at St. Petersburg. And all of a sudden, some words came to me, and I jotted them down, and I've remembered them all these years. The interesting thing that makes it commentary noticeable is that we were 8 hours ahead of ourselves. And I woke up in the middle of the night wanting to shave. But anyway, these words came to me, and I wrote them down. I went ahead 8 hours in time, across the water to the top of the world, and stood there perplexed. Should I know more than I did before? Just suppose I were whisked on board a westbound transatlantic Concorde. Arriving there midst familiar scenes, would I know what I would have for lunch? Could I prevent the traffic accident from happening, the one I saw just now in Russia? Turn left, not right, I could tell the man, and prevent his nose from being bloodied. Could I? I wonder. I see 3 youths garbed in greatcoats of the Russian army. 5 years ago, they were ogres intent on our destruction. Now they are kids, tapping booted feet to Western rock, sneaking drags on acrid cigarettes, and wondering what it must be like to go where I am going. I could tell you, Russian soldier, I could tell you what it's like to fly and cruise. But what's the use? You have your own journey to make. You cannot know that 50 years ago, a callow youth in American khaki pondered those same thoughts on a scented South Carolina evening. Now, his journey's almost through. And looking down from 100 feet or more at you, all's the same it comes to mind. 8 hours ahead or 50 years behind. I know but cannot tell. Russian soldier, I wish you well. Good night, Russian soldier. I wish you well.
Did you have a hard time juggling business and family and travel, things like that?
Well, in retrospect, I must have, but it didn't seem so at the time.
And you were member of several civic organizations, weren't you?
Yes, I joined the JCs, as I said early on, and we were very active. I joined the Kiwanis Club, the Atlanta Touchdown Club, the Quarterback Club.
Do you think it's important for someone who's able to be involved in bettering the community?
Yes, indeed. I had no idea. I came to Atlanta in '54. That's the first big city I'd ever lived in. First city I'd ever lived in. And I didn't know how cities operated. I didn't know how the Herbie operated, for that matter. There were a lot of things I had to find out about living in a city. But I also learned that the city operates because of the activities of hundreds of thousands of worker bees that don't get credit for a lot of the things that get done. And the JCs were a prime mover in getting people to vote. We got the vote registered. We got the water fluoridated in the city of Atlanta. We did a lot of things that turned out to be good, worthwhile projects. So I was very proud of that.
Your kids must have grown up in Atlanta.
Yes.
Were they or you affected by integration?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Our kids went to an integrated school, and I said, I'm not going to worry about that, so I'm not going to make any protest if they move some blacks out to go to school with my kids, or if they move my kids to go to school with them. Well, that was a very nice political statement to make, but it didn't work because I found out they were going to move my 2 boys down to middle Atlanta to go to school, and I'd have to go down there to watch football practice. And I said, no, thank you very much. So my principals went barely less than skin deep. So I put them in a private school.
So how do you look at the progress of Atlanta over the years that you've been a business leader here?
I came to Atlanta, didn't know B from bullwhack about who was who, but I had a story to tell about self-insurance, and people listened to me. They'd say, yeah, you know so-and-so, he recommends you as an honest man. So as a consequence, we started a business and ran it into a great big business, sold it, and started an industry that is still going to this day.
How important is it and was it for you to be an honest man?
Well, I didn't know that you had the choice.
How would you describe yourself, your personality, your viewpoint?
Well, I really, it's too late. It's already been done. I don't write epitaphs or eulogies anymore. I wrote 40-something eulogies for good buddies, and I'll leave mine to somebody else.
Well, you mentioned the quote from AA. How did you learn that quote?
Because I was an alcoholic and am an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink of alcohol for 35 years. And that was one of the more important steps, looking back now, to say, yeah, this is something that I can't handle by myself, so I need help. And I went to AA and got it.
Have you continued to go to AA meetings?
Yes, up until I became non-ambulatory.
Has it been important to you to pass on what you've learned through AA to other recovering?
Yes, it has.
How have you done that?
That's just the way the books tell you to do it. Go to meetings, offer your name to somebody who's obviously suffering, and offer to work with them any way you can. And if they have something that needs doing, try to help them do it. But just telling them that there is somebody there to catch them on the rebound, because when you're at the very bottom, it feels like there's no rebound at all. That you're in a dead, quiet zone in the cellar where there's no bouncing up, but there is. And if you bounce a little bit, you'll bounce enough to get a toehold.
How did you know when you needed to start going to AA? What was your very bottom?
I ran into a Georgia Power telephone pole, electric pole. Cost me $1,200. We were never taught a philosophy of drinking. Gentleman drinking was something that was practiced at the University of Virginia, perhaps, or the University of North Carolina, but not in the coal fields of West Virginia. And so the only drinking that I ever saw was done out of the top of a jug. And it was very difficult to, when I got into a position of selling presidents of companies and trade associations and holding open houses, that was pretty tough to hold hospitality suites open for 26 hours a day. But you can do it.
So you did what you had to do succeed in the business.
That's the answer.
He didn't drink at all when we got married, and neither did I.
You drive, you do just exactly what has to be done. And if you'll look hard enough, you'll find that somebody has figured out what has to be done for just about anything that there is in civilization.
Was it difficult for you to go through the steps where you had to apologize to people?
No. No, it's just like everything else in life. There's a price to be paid for everything. And if you can't pay it, don't buy it. That sounds tacky, but it's a fact in my judgment.
Who helped you at that point when you joined AA?
Oh, dozens of people. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days.
So, are there things that you would like to say that you haven't said?
No, there are people who have said it. Everything that I believe in, which is a very small book. People have said it before me and done it a lot better than I can. If I were to write down the things I know for a fact, once you get beyond the night is dark and daylight is light, and the basic truisms, there aren't very many things that we absolutely know for sure are true. We take enlightened men's word for it.
Well, what do you believe in?
Not much.
And some people would consider that answer cynical. How would you consider it?
Honest.